Hello YouTube, my name is Glenn Anderson, I'm the Natural Strongman, and in today's video I'm going to give you 7 tips on how you can improve at strongman competitions. In addition to that, we're also going to look back at one of my old strongman competitions from 2018 and have a look at the mistakes that I made and what I would do differently now, and hopefully help you if you have any strongman competitions coming up. I mean, I know how frustrating it can be where you do a strongman competition and you look back at it in retrospect and you go, oh, I could have done this better, or I shouldn't have done that, or if I hadn't have dropped the object or whatever, or various other mistakes, you know. And like I say, it can be really frustrating sometimes because you're thinking, if I hadn't have done that, you know, if I'd have done this better or whatever, maybe I could have got more points and maybe I could have played slightly higher. So first we'll dive into the tips, and then afterwards we'll have a look at some mistakes that people make in strongman and some mistakes that I too have also made. Okay, so the first tip is simply don't deviate. What I mean by that is you've been training for this competition, now you've got this strongman competition coming up. If you've been training a certain way, do exactly in the competition the way you've been training. If you've been using a certain belt in your training, wear that in the competition. If you've been using certain sleeves or elbow sleeves or wrist wraps, whatever equipment you may be using, if you've been using that in training, use it in the competition. Or if there's like a certain technique, like with the log or whatever, or the deadlift or any other event, if you've been using a certain technique in your training, use that event on the day, or that technique on the day of the competition. What you don't want to do is train in a certain way with certain techniques and certain equipment, and then when the day comes, you start doing something different because it's just going to throw you off. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Sometimes someone will use a certain technique that they've been training with, that they're used to, but they'll see all the other competitors will do something different, so then they'll change and then do what the other competitors are doing. You don't want to do that. Just stick to what you're doing. Once you go to the competition, it's too late to start messing around. It's too late to start doing something different. Stick to what you're used to. Stick to what you've been doing. Okay, don't start doing different things. With a deadlift, if you roll the bar towards you in training, do that in the comp. If you one motion the log in your training, do that. Whatever you're doing in training, do it in the competition. Don't deviate. Don't suddenly change things on the day because it's just too late at that point. This ties in with tip number 2, which is basically don't eat anything differently, either the night before or on the day of your comp. During your training phase, in the build up to the competition, if you've been eating a certain food or certain foods, don't start eating something different the day before or on the day of the comp. Eat things that you know well, things that you're used to, things that you digest well, and things that are comfortable for you. What you don't want to start doing is the day before the comp or the day of the comp, eat something that you're unfamiliar with, and something that's basically going to give you bloating or cramp or a bad stomach or whatever, because it could just throw you off your training or whatever. So don't do that. Don't eat anything that you've never eaten before or things that you're not used to eating. Stick with what you know, stick with what you've been eating, and hopefully you should be fine. Okay, so tip number 3 is basically keep your nerves at bay. Basically, I know it's tough, especially if it's your first competition. Sometimes even I get nervous, and I've done 6 competitions to date. My last competition, actually, the night before I didn't get nervous, I didn't think about it. Even the morning before, I don't think it was until the comp actually started that I started to get a little bit nervous, but even then I managed to keep it at bay. One good tip, the night before, I'll just watch a film or something, just totally take my mind off the comp. I'll try and pretend it's not there, and then the morning before, just have a nice breakfast. And generally, the way I look at it, I just try and think of it as just another training session. Just imagine you're going down there and it's another training session. Don't think that it's a comp. You know, don't put pressure on yourself. You know, at the end of the day, you can't control what other people are going to do. You can only control what you're going to do. Okay, so long as your training's been going well and all that, and you're confident, then you should be okay. But you know, try not to get too nervous, because a little bit of nerves is okay, but too much nerves is just going to mess with you basically, and it's just you're gonna perform badly at the comp if you're just overly nervous. I've had the same thing myself. I did a competition in 2018. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, the comp. I got there early, but because I was so nervous, I hardly slept. I literally had like an hour's sleep the night before, and it was a hot day as well the next day, and the combination of heat and just the fact that I was really nervous, I did really badly. And when the first event came, the log press, I couldn't even get a single rep. I just did so badly. So, you know, I know it's easier said than done, but you know, you got to try and just take your mind off it if you can. Try to get too nervous. Like I say, a little bit of nerves is fine and all that, because that'll give you the adrenaline. But I always try to keep it at bay at least until the comp's starting, and then once I've done my warm ups and all that, and I'm ready to put myself into that sympathetic state, then hopefully everything should all roll. But I know it's hard, but try to just keep the old nerves at bay if you can. Okay, so tip number 4, just the day of the competition, just try and, especially in the morning before, try to keep yourself in a parasympathetic state as much as you can. For those of you who don't know, there's sympathetic state and parasympathetic state. Okay, so a parasympathetic state is basically when you're at rest. Let's say you're sitting chilling on the sofa and watching telly, but sympathetic state is basically like the flight or fight syndrome, you know, when you're preparing your body to do a workout and you've got that adrenaline going. So in the morning before your competition, you basically want to be as chilled out as you possibly can be. Just breathe through your nose and just try to relax and meditate. Again, I know it's not easy, especially if you've got the nerves, but you really got to try and do that. Try to keep yourself out of that sympathetic state for as long as you can until the actual competition starts. And then when the competition starts, boom, you're ready to go. But try not to get yourself amped up too early, because you're just going to burn energy, you're just going to excite your nervous system, and then when it does come time to perform, you're just going to be all over the place and you're just not going to be able to perform as well as you otherwise would be able to. Okay, so the next tip is basically try not to watch your competitors, try not to focus too much on them. In between events, once I've done my event and I've had my go and it's time for other people to lift, I will just sit down, I will have something to eat or something to drink, something that's got carbohydrates in it and give me a quick release of energy. So I'll try not to focus too much on other people, really just sit, try to stay calm between events and just try to focus on yourself, and just try not to focus on anyone else. Sometimes you'll get some young lads and all that, they're in their early 20s or whatever, or even late teens, it's their first comp, they've never been there before, they come down, they see the size of some of the lads, some of the other guys are like really big and all that, and some people can get intimidated by that. One thing I will say is don't let the size of the other competitors intimidate you. You know, you can't always judge a man by his size. I've been to competitions before. I mean, I'm 6 foot and 148 kilos. I'm a pretty big guy, but I've seen strongmen before at my competitions that I've competed against that are a lot bigger than me. Okay, you know, like I say, it can be disheartening when you see guys that are like 6'6", 6'7", and they're like 170, 180 kilos, they're massive and all that. But I've seen guys like that before, and some of them, their strength is absolutely piss poor, you know, especially if you're doing a novice at the first time. Remember, if they're competing in the novice against you, they're also novice as well. Okay, and if they're that big, okay, they might have trouble with the moving events, or even if they're good statically, you might be able to beat them in the moving events. But try not to think about it, try not to worry about that too much, try not to get intimidated when you see, because like I say, at strongman competitions, you probably will see some really big guys and all that. And like I say, if you're not that big and you're young and you're just starting out, it's your first comp, like I say, sometimes that can be a bit intimidating, but again, you've got to really get that out of your mind, because at the end of the day, unless you know them personally, you don't know what they're capable of. They don't know what you're capable of. Okay, yeah, they might go and win the whole thing. On the other hand, their strength might be piss poor and they might end up coming last. You just don't know. I've seen it happen. I did a comp a few years ago, there was like 16 of us, and it was the one where I got 6th place. It's actually the comp that I'm going to talk about shortly, and there was a really big guy there. He was much bigger than me, and he actually comes second to last. I think out of 16 guys, he got 15th or something like that, so don't worry about it, okay? In strongman, size doesn't always necessarily mean anything. You know, the bigger guys don't always win. I mean, look at Wells 2020, Novikov won, and he was one of the smallest guys there, so he was like half the size of Brian Shaw. But conversely as well, if there's like a lot of guys there and you're one of the biggest and most of them are small, don't think that because they're smaller they're not going to win, because I've also seen some guys that are smaller than me. They're not much to look at, they're not particularly tall, they're not particularly big or well built, but they're really good in the moving events, and some of them even got good static strength. Actually, I've actually seen guys that are smaller than me win the whole thing outright. So again, you can't always judge a guy by his size. So like I say, if you see all the big guys and all that, just don't worry about it too much, because like I say, if you're a novice and they're novice, obviously their strength isn't going to be all that, because if it were, they'd be higher, they'd be inters or open. So if they're down there in novice with you or whatever, don't worry about it too much. Okay, so the next tip, eat immediately after events. let's say you go to the competition, and in most strongman competitions, especially the ones I've done, it's normally always a pressing movement first. In the last comp it was a barbell, but a lot of times it will be a log or an axle. Normally in most strongman competitions, especially in the UK, I'm from the UK, they will normally give you a floor to overhead press first. That's normally the first event you're going to do. So you do that. As soon as you've done that, eat something. You know, it could be your Haribos or your bananas or your Lucozade, whatever you've got with you. That's generally what I tend to go for. Okay, so as soon as you've done the event, have something to eat. This then gives you energy, a quick release of energy, and it also gives you a bit of time to digest it before you have to go to your next event. What you don't want to do is have something to eat and then 10 seconds later you're being called. You don't want to have lots of food inside you and then you have to go. So eat immediately after your event, because you might have 10 minutes or 20 minutes before you have to lift again. It depends. All competitions are different, depends how many people are down there. But sometimes you'll have longer in between events than other competitions, so always try and get your food in after you've done your event, not right immediately before you're due to do your next event. Okay, so last tip, basically when you go into these strongman competitions, try to have someone with you, not just for the moral support, but obviously like to help you out with things and all that. In my last competition I had my girlfriend with me and I had my sister with me, and they was both really invaluable. Basically they did the filming of me, because obviously if you're going to a comp, especially for your first one, you're going to want to film, not just to put it on Facebook or Insta, but also maybe to look back at it and see where you could have gone wrong. You know, I always do, I'll look back to see, yeah, I could have done this. So yeah, make sure you've got someone with you, someone that's going to help out, maybe carry some bags or help you get your equipment and all that in between events or something. And just like I say, not just for the support, but someone that's going to help you out, someone that's going to help with filming, help with, like I say, bags, equipment and all that, food, whatever. So, you know, try not to go to these events alone if you don't have to. It's always good to have a helping hand, and hopefully that'll make things easier, especially if there's not a lot of people and the competition is quite quickly, because I've done competitions before. Actually, the last couple of competitions I did, they was actually fairly short competitions, because the last one I did, there was only 7 of us, and the one before that there was only 8. So these competitions were actually run very quickly. So you did your event, and then you literally didn't have long to go until you had the next event. Whereas I've done other competitions here before where you actually have a long time between events, because you might have like 30 guys all taking their turn to lift. So like I say, it does help to have someone with you to just make things just that little bit easier in between events. Okay, so there's your 7 tips, which I hope that helps, and hopefully it should make competitions a little bit easier. What I'm going to do now is we're going to look at a strongman competition I did from 2018. It was the last novice I ever did actually, but looking back, there was 5 events and I did make quite a few mistakes. So we're going to take a look at that footage now, and I'm going to have a look at the mistakes, and I will tell you like what I would do differently now. And yeah, like I say, hopefully that'll help you if you have any comps coming up yourself in the future. Hello guys, so now we're going to look back at my competition from Gravesend, September 2nd, 2018. So there was 5 events, and this is the first one, 90 kilo log press for reps. So if we go back to here, on this first rep, I go there, but I didn't wait for the down signal. I didn't lock it out. So although I actually completed 9, I only got given 8. So when you're in a competition, always make sure that you wait for the down signal first. Okay, so this time I waited for the down signal, so I got given that. So that's my first one. Notice there, I don't think I was wearing a belt here either. Definitely a mistake. Yeah, I definitely weren't wearing a belt. That's another mistake. I'll be wearing a belt. The other mistake that I'm making here as well, not so much now, but to begin with, I was one motioning them. One motioning really takes a lot out of you, and it was taking a lot out of me here. And now I've tried to rush it. With one motion, yes, you can get more reps in a specified amount of time, but unless you've got really good conditioning like Kilikowski or whatever, I really wouldn't bother. Oh god, that was bad. No, I just lost my balance there. So it's best to just lap it properly and just press it. Don't one motion it unless you've got really ultra good conditioning, because you're just going to gas yourself out, not just for the log but for future events. Okay, so next one here is a 200 kilo deadlift, and I managed 10. If I was doing this now, I would not be rolling the bar towards me. That's just making it take a lot longer. I never roll the bar towards me now anyway, whether I'm doing a max or whether I'm doing reps. This is an old technique that I used to do, and I just wouldn't advise it. I've had much better results just having the bar close to me and then just deadlifting it out. So again, this is what I deem another mistake. Although if you feel rolling the bar towards you is better, then by all means have at it. But if I was doing this now, I would not be doing that. I wouldn't be rolling the bar towards me, especially for reps, because it's just taking too much time. At least this time I made sure I got the down signal on each rep. I didn't repeat my mistake from the log. So we got 10 reps there. Third event is yoke carry. I actually got second on this. This was actually a really good one for me. Yoke is a good event for me normally. The only mistake that I made is that I think I dropped it on the way back. So if you look here, yep, there we are, I've just dropped it. Big mistake. You really don't want to be dropping it, because that will just spend you seconds basically. It's going to cost you more time. If you're struggling with the weight, it's better to just try and go slowly and keep going. You really don't want to drop it where you don't have to, because like I say, if you drop it, you're just going to lose so much time. So that's one thing to be wary of. But other than that, I don't think I made any mistakes there. I think I did okay. So here I was 150 kilos or 330. I was at my heaviest there, and my conditioning was not great. Whereas this dude on the right, he was only 130 kilos, so he was 20 kilos lighter than me, and he was in much better conditioning than I was. So after 3 events, I was in second place, and I was doing really well. But this is the 4th event. This is where it started going wrong now. I was kind of gassed after doing the first 3 events. So by the time I got to the 4th, I just had nothing left. I don't think it was so much the weight here. I think it was the fact that I was just gassed, really, that I just couldn't keep going. This is why it's absolutely imperative to be in condition and shape for strongman. Another mistake I'm making, if you look there, you'll see my grip is too far forward. I would have that back. But again, this ties into the next mistake. Now I knew not to do that, but because I was panicking, I was just grabbing the farmers any way that I could, really. So you really want to try and keep your head in a competition. It's not easy, I know, when you've got everyone screaming, look how close I was to the line, but unfortunately I didn't quite make it there. I just ran out of time. I was just panicking and all that, and I was just absolutely gassed. I really had nothing left, to be honest. I put so much effort into the first 3 events that by the time I got to the 4th and 5th events, I just had nothing left. So this is the last event. I've got to say my conditioning here is really offensive, to be honest. It's kind of embarrassing. Obviously I would do things differently now. My conditioning is quite a bit better now than it was then. It's still not brilliant, but my conditioning is better than it used to be. But here, like I say, I was 150 kilos in body weight, and I was really out of shape. So I did really well on the static events. But unfortunately, when it comes to the moving events, I just didn't have the conditioning to keep going, and it cost me. So notice there, I've bent down and I've took my time to get my arms around it. That was a big mistake. Whereas if you look at the other guy, he's just grabbed it diagonally and gone. I would not be lifting a keg like that now. I would be lifting it completely different. So that's the first one. And the other guy's already on his second, and I'm just coming to my second now. And like I say, see, I'm just fucking around here. I'm just taking way too much time, just trying to lap it and then carry it with both hands on it. Whereas look at the way that guy's lifting his. It's such a better technique. I've now gone to that myself, but it's a little bit too late now. He's already finished, and I'm just finishing my second now. So there we are. He's already wiped the floor with me. Look, and now I'm literally just jogging back because I was absolutely buggered here. I remember before this competition I was sitting down and they called my name and I was absolutely out of breath. I was absolutely fucked, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't do this, I can't do this. I was literally dragging my ass on this last event because this is only a 100 kilo keg. I could lift this. It was just the fact that I was spent. I just didn't have anything. So there we are. Only 2 kegs completed out of 3, and overall I got 6th place. So after 3 events I was in 2nd place, but because I did so badly on the last 2 events I went all the way down to 6th place. This is why I've started adding conditioning in to my strongman. It is absolutely imperative that you work on your conditioning, because if we look here, watch how the other guy grabs his keg. This is exactly the way I would do it now. Just grab it and go, not fuck around lapping it and trying to get it into a position. There we are. See how he's doing it now. Look, he's already gone and I'm still there. Now I start to move and he's already halfway down the course. So don't do this, what I'm doing here. This is crap, okay? Don't do it. Do what the other guy did, okay? So there we are. As you can see, on this competition I made mistakes in practically all 5 of my events. So you know, take away from this is, like I say, if you do a competition and all that, especially if it's your first or even if it's your second, look back, look at what you did wrong, learn from it. For me, my main takeaway of course is don't one motion the log because you ain't got the conditioning for it. Don't roll your deadlift, don't drop your yoke. Don't panic on the farmers because you keep dropping it, and because you're panicking you're not grabbing it correctly like you should. And obviously with the keg I could have grabbed that better, and obviously my conditioning was shit here. Like I say, this was 4 years ago and I was 150 kilos, which is pretty much the heaviest I've ever been. I've dropped some weight since and my conditioning has improved. But yeah, like I say, looking back at this, in some ways it's almost cringeworthy, but it's a learning curve, you know. It's a lesson, it's lessons learnt really. So this was in Gravesend in Kent. And yeah, I was like, I mean, to get 6th place, it's not the end of the world, but I honestly do believe if I knew then what I know now, I probably could have podiumed then. I'm not saying I would have won, but if my conditioning had been better and if I hadn't have made the mistakes that I made, and I did make quite a lot of mistakes here, then yeah, I do honestly believe I could have podiumed. The strength was there because my strength is better than my fitness. As a strongman, I'm better statically than I am at moving events. So moving events is something I really have tried to work on in the last few years after this. But yeah, there we are. So that's it. So like I say, I hope you guys found this helpful. If you've got any competitions yourself, or maybe you've not done any competitions and you're thinking of doing it and you want to have a look and see what's in store for you, well, this is one of them. So you know, almost every strongman competition will have a deadlift. So, and most competitions it is going to be for reps, it's not going to be for max. Some competitions will be for max, but most are for reps. So please I urgently beg you, please work on your conditioning, especially if you're big like me, if you're like 140 kilos plus, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, if you're excessively big, it's going to hold you back. So you know, like I say, a lot of these comps, especially like the novice comps and the inters, it's a lighter weight, so there are guys there, if they're in better shape than you, they're going to perform better even if they're not as statically strong. So I'm really working on my conditioning now. I've started doing the stationary bike, the assault bike. The rowing machine is really good, and I try and get at least 10,000 steps in a day. Even on my days off, I go out and walk and all that and stuff, not just for recovery, but walking is good as well. So you know, it all counts. Just try and be more active. You know, maybe try and drop a bit of weight. So yeah, like I say, it all helps anyway. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you've got any competitions or maybe whatever mistakes you've made in the comp. And yeah, I'll see you all guys soon for the next video. Take care.